Have you ever met someone who felt like destiny? That spark that hits so fast it almost frightens you. The way her eyes lock on yours, the way she says, "It's crazy how much we have in common." You smile, but somewhere in your chest a whisper says, "This is too perfect." You ignore it. You always do. Weeks later, you're staring at your phone, watching those 3 little dots vanish again. The warmth that once drew you in now feels like a trap you built yourself. You wonder, was she real? Or was she only ever my reflection? If that sounds familiar, stay with me to the end of this video, because what you're about to hear might change how you understand attraction forever. Hit subscribe, tap like, and promise yourself you'll watch this whole thing, because once you see these 7 signs, you'll never mistake illusion for love again. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Every heartbreak, every silence, every disappearing act carries a message from your unconscious. Tonight we're going to decode it. Point 1, she mirrors you too fast, projection. It started so perfectly, didn't it? You met her and it felt like destiny had finally exhaled. She laughed at your jokes like she'd known your humor forever. She said she loved the same music, the same books, the same quiet places where the world slows down. You looked into her eyes and thought, finally, someone who gets me. And that's the first illusion Carl Jung warned us about. Projection. When she mirrors you too fast, it's not always love. Sometimes it's the unconscious pretending to be you. You thought you'd found a mirror that reflected your soul, but what you really found was a reflection she created to capture it. Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But the reverse is also true. Everything we love in others can reveal what we secretly wish to be. And she saw something in you that she wanted to borrow. Think back. How quickly did she start finishing your sentences? How effortlessly did she adopt your language, your hobbies, your pace? It felt intoxicating because it was you, reflected back at yourself. And who doesn't fall in love with their own reflection when it finally looks like safety after years of chaos? But that's the danger. When someone mirrors you too perfectly, it's often a sign they don't yet know who they are. They build a version of themselves around your desires, not out of love, but out of survival. At first it feels like connection. Then slowly you begin to sense the hollow echo underneath her words. You tell her about your childhood, and she tells a story that sounds suspiciously similar. You speak of your fears and she swears she feels them too. But over time her mask starts to slip. You catch glimpses of a person behind the mirror, colder, restless, unsure. That's when confusion sets in. Because how do you grieve someone who never truly existed? You weren't just in love with her. You were in love with the reflection of yourself she projected. It's why after she's gone, you keep replaying every moment in your head, whispering, "She wasn't like that in the beginning." Of course she wasn't. In the beginning, she was you. Jung called this the anima projection. The moment a man projects his inner feminine ideal onto a woman, mistaking her for the missing part of his own soul. But love based on projection can't last, because the moment reality enters, illusion dies. She mirrored you so you'd fall, not necessarily out of malice, but out of emptiness, because she didn't want to discover herself. She wanted to borrow your identity until she felt whole again, and when you finally stopped feeding that illusion, she disappeared. Not because you did anything wrong, but because mirrors shatter the moment you stop looking into them. Point 2. She thrives on chaos, the unintegrated shadow. It always starts small, doesn't it? A little drama here, a sudden argument there, a flicker of tension that somehow feels alive. One day she's warm, overflowing with affection. The next she's distant, cold, impossible to reach. You tell yourself, that's just how passion works. But deep down you know something isn't right. She doesn't crave peace and she craves intensity. And every time calm starts to settle in, she subconsciously shakes the foundation just to feel something again. Carl Jung called this the unintegrated shadow, the part of ourselves we refuse to face. So it comes alive through chaos. For her, chaos isn't destruction, it's familiarity. It's the rhythm of a childhood where love came with storms, where affection always arrived with fear. So now, when things get peaceful, it doesn't feel like love, it feels like emptiness. Remember the times she picked fights for no reason? The moments she accused you of pulling away, right after a beautiful night together. You stood there stunned, asking yourself, where did that come from? That's her shadow at play, testing whether love can survive disorder. Because peace feels too foreign to trust, you start trying harder, explaining yourself more, calming her storms like it's your purpose. But every time you fix one wave, another rises. Because you're not dealing with logic. You're dealing with a wound disguised as a woman. She thrives on chaos because chaos gives her control. In disorder, she feels seen. In peace, she feels invisible. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And that's the tragedy. She never made her darkness conscious. She projects it outward, onto you, onto love, onto life. You'll catch yourself saying things like, "She's not bad, she's just hurt." And you'll be right, but that's also how you stay stuck. Because pain that refuses to heal will always find someone else to bleed on. Maybe you remember one night, after another fight, she cried, "I don't know why I do this." And you believed her. You held her tighter. But here's the truth. Until she faces her shadow, she will keep doing it. Not because she wants to hurt you, but because the chaos inside her needs somewhere to live. You can't love the chaos out of her. You can only love yourself enough not to drown in it. When love starts to feel like survival, when you mistake tension for passion, that's when you know you've stepped into someone else's shadow. And if you stay too long, it becomes your shadow too. Point 3, her words don't match her energy, the divided self. There's a strange kind of heartbreak. That doesn't happen all at once. It happens in whispers. She still says all the right things. "I love you. You mean everything to me. I'm just tired lately." But something in her voice feels hollow, like a melody that's lost its rhythm. You can't explain it, but you feel it. The warmth that once lived in her tone and was gone. She used to look at you like you were her safe place. Now she looks through you, as if her mind is somewhere else entirely. You ask yourself 1,000 times, did I do something wrong? But what you're really witnessing is her becoming divided. Carl Jung called this the divided self. When a person's inner world splits from their outer world. When the mask they wear every day, the smiling, calm, everything's fine version, stops matching what's really going on inside. And once that happens, love starts to feel like confusion. Because you're no longer relating to a whole person. You're relating to two versions of her. One that speaks and one that hides. You'll notice it in small things first. She hugs you, but her body feels cold. She says, "I miss you," but avoids spending real time together. She tells you, "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." But somehow, you still feel lonely next to her. It's like loving a ghost. She's there, but not there. You remember the days when her laughter could fill a room. How you felt seen just by existing beside her. Now silence has replaced that laughter. And your heart feels like it's talking to a wall that once echoed your name. Jung said that when a person disconnects from their authentic self, they project an image to survive, but that image can't sustain intimacy. She may still love you in her mind, but her soul is somewhere else, lost, restless, searching. That's why your intuition aches even when everything looks fine. It's your spirit sensing the truth. Her energy has already left, even if her words haven't caught up yet. You tell yourself maybe it's just stress, but you know what stress doesn't do? It doesn't drain the life out of "I love you." It doesn't turn affection into obligation. You try harder, you give more, stay longer, because you remember who she was. But here's the brutal truth. That version of her isn't coming back, because she's not even connected to it anymore. When her words and her energy no longer match, love becomes a performance, and you become the audience, clapping for a play that ended long ago. And that realization, it's the quiet kind of heartbreak that doesn't make you cry at first. It just makes you empty. Because deep down, you realize you were the only one still trying to keep the story alive. Point 4, she uses vulnerability as a weapon, emotional manipulation. It's strange how something that once felt sacred, her tears, her trembling voice, her soft confessions, can slowly start to feel like a trap. You remember the first night she opened up to you. Her eyes glistened under the dim light as she whispered about her pain, her broken past, the people who never understood her. You held her close. In that moment you thought, she trusts me. And that trust felt like love. But over time you began to notice something subtle. Her pain always returned, right when you tried to set a boundary. Whenever you said, "I need some space," her eyes filled with tears. Whenever you tried to talk about what you needed, she'd remind you of how much she'd been through. And slowly, you started choosing silence, not peace, because silence caused less damage. That's how emotional manipulation feels. It doesn't shout. It whispers. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest tragedy of the human psyche is when the wound becomes the identity." And that's exactly what she's done. She's learned to use her wounds not to connect, but to control. Every time you tried to speak your truth, she'd shift the focus back to her suffering. Suddenly you were the villain and she, the fragile one, was the victim. And you'd end up apologizing for things you didn't even do, just to stop the emotional storm. You started walking on eggshells, editing your words, apologizing just to keep the peace. And yet deep down, you missed the man you were before all this, the one who didn't have to earn peace by sacrificing his truth. Her vulnerability felt real because in many ways it was. But she never wanted healing. She wanted control. And control disguised as fragility is the most dangerous kind. You might remember those nights and after a fight, where she'd cry and say, "Everyone leaves me," and your heart full of empathy whispered, "Not me." But here's the quiet truth Jung would tell you. You can't save someone who uses their pain as a weapon, because the moment you try, you become their hostage. You'll spend nights replaying her stories, the sadness in her voice, the innocence in her eyes, and wonder, was it all manipulation? Maybe not all of it. But the moment her pain became your leash, love stopped being love. Because love invites healing, manipulation demands submission. And real love doesn't ask you to abandon yourself to prove your care. It doesn't use tears as chains or trauma as tools. It allows both hearts to be free, even in their pain. So if her vulnerability feels more like control than connection, remember this. You're not heartless for stepping away from her pain. You're wise enough to stop mistaking guilt for love. Point 5, because love is not control. It's strange how, in the beginning, control never looks like control. It looks like care. It sounds like love. It hides behind phrases like, "I just worry about you," or "I only get jealous because I care so much." And at first you believed it. You told yourself she just loves deeply. You mistook possessiveness for passion and anxiety for affection. But then the question started. Where are you? Who were you with? Why didn't you reply sooner? And before you realized it, love stopped feeling like freedom. It started feeling like a test you kept failing. Carl Jung once said, "Where love rules, there is no will to power. And where power predominates, there love is lacking." You didn't see it then, but she wasn't loving you. She was trying to own you. At first, you fought it gently. You tried to explain, tried to reassure. You told her she had nothing to worry about. But every time you gave reassurance, it only fed the fire. Because control isn't cured by comfort, it's fueled by it. The more you gave, the more she needed. And soon you weren't living freely. You were managing her emotions. You stopped going out with friends. You stopped laughing as loud. You stopped being you, all just to avoid another argument. But love isn't supposed to make you smaller. It isn't supposed to feel like walking through a minefield of emotions you didn't cause. You remember those quiet nights, sitting in your car after another fight, wondering how something so beautiful had turned so heavy. You thought, maybe if I love her harder, she'll feel safe again. But that's the cruelest illusion. Thinking your love can heal someone's fear of losing control. Jung taught that control is the shadow side of fear. When someone hasn't faced their own insecurities, they try to control what they can, and that's often the person closest to them. You weren't her partner anymore. You were her anchor, her mirror, her emotional regulator. And the worst part? You started believing that was normal. But real love doesn't demand your surrender. It doesn't require your silence. It doesn't cage you under the name of care. Because love, true love, can only exist in freedom. And maybe that's what broke you most, not losing her, but realizing she never wanted to love you. She wanted to possess you. She wanted your presence, but not your independence. She wanted to feel safe, even if that meant you couldn't breathe. And one day when you finally walked away, it wasn't out of anger. It was out of clarity. You realized love is not control. It's the courage to let go even when every part of you still remembers her touch. Because freedom, not fear, is the truest form of love. Point 6. She can't be alone. The fear of emptiness. There was always something about her silence that scared you. Not because she yelled or argued, but because she couldn't stand being alone with herself. Do you remember those nights? When she'd text you out of nowhere, "I miss you," right after disappearing for days? Or when she'd start a random fight just to feel something again? That wasn't love. That was loneliness wearing love's perfume. Carl Jung called it the void of the unexamined self. It's the emptiness that comes when someone hasn't made peace with their inner world, so they fill it with attention, drama, or attachment, and she was a master at it. Every time she felt that hollow ache rise up, that quiet reminder that she didn't know who she was without someone to love her, she'd reach for you, not because she wanted you, but because she needed distraction. You became her medicine, her emotional bandage, her escape from herself, and for a while you didn't mind. You told yourself it was love. You felt needed, wanted, important. But deep down you knew every time she pulled away,
She was just resetting the game.
disappear, panic, return, repeat. Tell me, have you ever stayed awake at 2 a.m. staring at your phone, hoping she'd call again, even after all the chaos? That's the power of emotional addiction. Two people feeding each other's emptiness, mistaking pain for passion. But the truth is, you can't save someone who's at war with their own silence. You can't hold a person who's never learned to hold themselves, because no matter how close you get, it's never enough. You're not fighting her, you're fighting her void. Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And that's exactly what she did, and she called her fear fate. She told herself, this is just how I love. But what she really meant was, I'm terrified of being alone with my thoughts. She chased attention to avoid introspection. She craved connection but ran from intimacy. She wanted your love but not your reflection, because in your calmness, she saw her chaos, and when you finally walked away, it wasn't because you stopped loving her. It was because you finally understood that no amount of love can fill someone's inner emptiness. That's a journey only they can take, into their own shadow, into their own silence. You see, being alone doesn't destroy you. It reveals you. But she never learned that. She ran from her emptiness until it ran her life. And maybe that's the hardest part of all, realizing that the person who feared being alone the most is the one who taught you how sacred solitude really is. Point 7. She disappears when you show emotion, the avoidant archetype. There's a specific kind of silence that only comes after you've opened your heart to the wrong person. You remember the moment you finally dropped your guard. You stopped playing it cool, stopped pretending. You told her how you really felt, and that's when she vanished. No fight, no closure. Just distance, sudden, cold, and confusing. You replayed it over and over in your mind, didn't you? What did I say wrong? Was I too honest? Too emotional, too much? But the truth is, it wasn't your emotion that scared her. It was what your emotion reflected back to her. Carl Jung would say she was confronted by her shadow, the part of herself she spent her whole life avoiding. Your vulnerability was a mirror, showing her everything she'd buried, her own fears, her own capacity for love, her own unhealed pain. And instead of facing it, she ran. Because that's what the avoidant archetype does. It confuses intimacy with danger. It mistakes openness for weakness. It longs for closeness, but only from a safe emotional distance. You might have thought your honesty would bring you closer. Instead, it triggered her defenses. She disappeared not because she stopped caring, but because your emotional truth lit up everything she didn't want to see inside herself. Think back. How many times did she pull away right after a deep moment? A good night together, a heartfelt message, a real conversation, and suddenly she'd turn cold, unreachable, detached, saying, I just need space. That's not about you. That's about her nervous system. Love felt dangerous to her, not because you did anything wrong, but because safety itself felt unfamiliar. And yet you stayed. You told yourself, maybe if I just show her I'm patient, she'll come around. You thought your consistency would calm her fear. But here's the truth no one tells you. You can't soothe someone who's addicted to running, because every time you reach out, they need to prove to themselves they can still escape. Jung wrote, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And that's what she did. She ran from the mirror that was you. And I know that hurts, because your love was real. You weren't trying to fix her. You just wanted her to see you. But she couldn't, not yet. And maybe that's the lesson. Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who teach us how to love ourselves enough to stop chasing. Sometimes their silence is not rejection, it's redirection. So if she disappeared when you showed your heart, don't close it off. Protect it, yes, but don't bury it. Because one day someone will see your depth and won't run. She'll stay. She'll listen. She'll meet your emotion with her own. And you'll realize it was never your feelings that were too much. It was her capacity that was too small. Outro, the Jungian lesson. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Every heartbreak, every ghosting, every painful almost was not punishment. It was reflection. She wasn't your soulmate. She was your mirror. She showed you where you still needed to heal, where you still confused intensity for intimacy, control for care, chaos for love. So the next time your heart aches for someone who felt like home but treated you like a stranger, remember this. Maybe they were never home. Maybe they were just the fire that showed you what kind of warmth you truly deserve. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.